Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. Welcome. I want to share the foundation of my teachings of evolutionary enlightenment with all of you. And what I want to help you to understand is the secret of how you can practice enlightenment, which sounds like a strange thing. Because enlightenment is a higher state of consciousness. It's a spontaneous, free experience that unfolds naturally and effortlessly when it's for real. It's not really something that you can do as we experience a state of consciousness, which happens so naturally. But what most of us who are interested in enlightenment more than anything else have found is that the delightful and extraordinary and liberating state of enlightened awareness, usually for most of us, is not a permanent companion. She visits from time to time, which we're very happy about. And of course, if we're very serious, if we're very sincere about our love and adoration of her, she visits us more often. Because those of us who love her most will find that we think about her all the time and we are dreaming about her because we're so in love with her. And those of us who are most in love with her, she gives more attention to. So this is why. So yes. So the more we cherish enlightenment, the more we aspire to awaken to enlightened awareness, the more it becomes a primary goal in our life. The more we find that natural and spontaneous state of inner freedom and ecstasy will descend upon us and stay with us and nurture our soul like nothing else can do. But even then, for most of us, a delightful state of inner freedom and profound non-dual awareness is not a permanent attainment, and I've never met a person whom it seemed to be a permanent attainment. So the question is, in those rare moments when I don't have access to spontaneous enlightenment, what can I do to remain enlightened? It sounds like a strange thing to do, but it sounds like a strange thing to say, but it's actually an important question. Because if enlightenment means anything as an attainment, as something that one has actually realized, for example, someone says, have you met so-and-so? She's enlightened. So what does that mean? Well, that would mean to me that this individual, this rare individual, this unique individual is because of their love for enlightened awareness and their dedication to enlightenment, has, like few people do, realized some degree of stabilization in a degree of access to enlightened awareness. And that means if you get to know such an individual, each time you see them, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they speak, the way they look, the way they respond, all the things they don't say, and all the things they care about would express that consciousness and the awakening to a liberated consciousness and the awakening to the source of reality is their most important, is their highest value, what they give most important to. It's not just something that they are doing, not something that's a hobby for them, it's what they've given their life to. So for someone who is stabilizing enlightened awareness, it's usually because they have put it first as a priority. But in any case, the stabilization is something that you can get to see and recognize if you spend time in the company of people who are enlightened or have access to enlightened awareness. Now, when I was a seeker, I'd had different experiences of higher states of consciousness, but I was also very interested in what does this mystery look like? What does it walk like and talk like? What does it look like to be enlightened? I wanted to know what it looked like. I knew what the inner state felt like, but I wanted to know what enlightened people look like and what do they act like? What does it feel like to be around them? And it's part of the seeking process, I think, not only to practice meditation and to do spiritual practice and to aspire to experience higher states of consciousness, but also to spend time with people that have actually reached a measure of success and realizing a measure of stabilization in having access to this higher stage. And as a result, are able to demonstrate and emanate a profound and impressive degree of actual transformation, which is the whole point. because, you know, there's so much cynicism about the possibility of human transformation, even among people who talk a lot about it. A lot of people are very cynical about the fact of can human beings actually change? Is it possible to really awaken in a way that has any kind of permanence and deep meaning and significance? And the answer to the question is it definitely is. But you got to look for it. So in the days that I was a seeker, because I was looking for it, I met and came into contact with many different people who obviously had realized a profound degree of awakening, were stabilized in a higher state of consciousness and a much more profound relationship to life than I was. And each and every time I met somebody like this, it made an impression on me at a soul level. I could see the difference between them and myself. I could see and feel and that they were tangibly experiencing greater depth and experiencing life with greater depth, greater consciousness, and greater appreciation than I was. And this helped me to become a more humble seeker and realize that this is actually very real. It's not a joke and it's not a game. So the question is, enlightenment is the experience of a higher state of consciousness. And when we experience a higher state of consciousness, it usually occurs spontaneously, naturally, effortlessly. And like my guru said to me famously shortly after I met him, he said, Andrew, you don't have to make any effort to be free. So he was speaking about effortless and spontaneous awakening, effortless and spontaneous consciousness. So the question that I want to answer today, and the one I started trying to answer 2 weeks ago, I want to continue with it 2 weeks from now, is I was in a beautiful state of consciousness for a month, a week, a day, a few hours, but then I fell out of it. So the question is, what can I do to remain access to that higher state and to that state of to the spiritual self-confidence that I experience so profoundly when I'm in that state of consciousness? And so to answer this question, we have teachings, spiritual teachings, Dharma teachings. That's what the Dharma is. The Dharma are the teachings that help us to practice enlightenment. So enlightenment is a spontaneous experience that unfolds naturally and effortlessly. And it's also something that we can do, that we can make the effort to put into practice. And that's why it's possible that's why it's possible to be able to save ourselves and to liberate ourselves, because we don't have to depend upon the spontaneity of awakened consciousness. We can also put the teachings of the Dharma that are thousands of years old, we can put them into practice. And we can, lo and behold, we can all take responsibility for our own potential for enlightenment. So if you're not enlightened yet, you can ask yourself the question, why not? What is it that you're not doing that keeps this miracle and this mystery at such a distance? What makes it so unattainable for you? So I have a simple remedy, a simple solution, and my teachings on this, the teachings that have the answer to this question are my own, but they're synonymous with Enlightenment teachings that have been available to us for millennia. So there's nothing particularly new about what I'm going to share with you. It's just that I believe there's an elegant simplicity, if I can say that, about how I put these teachings together. Makes them very easy to understand and easy to put into practice. Sometimes the spiritual and metaphysical teachings become too esoteric. It becomes hard to understand what they're all about. So the foundation of the spiritual life and the foundation of our quest for enlightenment is the aspiration for it, which is what I spoke about 2 weeks ago. And just to briefly cover that again, the idea here is, I believe, if you're interested in awakening to enlightened awareness, if you want to know what the Buddha knew as a direct experience, that's to become very important for you. So I always ask everybody the question, do you want to be free? And everybody says yes. Only a fool would say no. So do you want to be free? Yes. Say, do you want to be free more than anything else? And everybody gets confused and say, free more than anything else, I'm not really sure about that. So the foundation of spiritual liberation, the enlightenment of the Buddha, is the desire for a liberation that's unconditional more than anything else, right here and right now, no ifs, ands, buts, or maybes. It means I want to be free even though I haven't finished my dinner yet, and I have an appointment to meet somebody to go to a movie later, and I have unfinished business with my therapist, and I have a problem that I'm working on with my marriage is still unresolved, and I still owe somebody some money, and et cetera, et cetera. So we all find ourselves in situations and predicaments that are unfinished and are demanding our attention. And the desire for liberation means that no matter what our relative circumstances may be, and no matter what the relative concerns may be, no matter how much unfinished business we all have, and we usually all have a lot of it, we usually have a lot of unfinished business. The call to liberation or unconditional liberation is a call to be ready to drop anything and everything here and now without excuses. And that's just far more than most people are ready for. And I understand that. Enlightenment is not for everybody. It's not for most people, to be brutally honest. But I'm just I'm just teaching and trying to share my understanding of how this works in a way that I hope you'll find helpful, because what I'm speaking about is actually real. So wanting to be free more than anything else means that it's become an absolute priority, and that there's nothing else in our life or in life itself that's calling us at a soul level than the promise of unconditional liberation at the level of consciousness. And it means we mean it. So it means I want to be free more than anything else, right here, right now, without any excuses. And I mean it. I'm willing to back it up. Whatever that means, whatever that's going to mean, any one of us will be different things, but it means I mean it. It means I'm serious about going all the way, whatever that means. And I know the only way to find out what it means to go all the way is to take the leap and find out where it's all leading to. Because you can't know before you take that leap, no matter how much you've read about it, you can't possibly have any idea where it's all going. It's a mystery. And it will remain a mystery until you take that leap. And it's a leap of faith, but it's also a leap of karma. Yeah. So the foundation of liberation is the desire for unconditional liberation without excuses. So if I lose touch with the state of enlightened awareness, what do I do to remain steady in that metaposition? I contemplate the nature of unconditional freedom itself directly as my primary aspiration in life, as my primary relationship to life itself. I want to be unconditionally free more than anything. And I mean it. So that's the foundation of everything. Remember, we're looking for the formula here. How can I, if enlightenment is a spontaneous, effortless state of inner freedom, how can I practice that spontaneous and effortless state of inner freedom when I'm not experiencing that spontaneous and effortless state of inner freedom at any given moment? So how I can do it is I can remind myself that I want to be free more than anything else. And even contemplating the fact that I want to be free more than anything else can open that door that seems so closed to us. Oh, wow, I remember that unconditional freedom. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot that it's even possible to be unconditionally free. Thank you for reminding me. People don't speak about unconditional freedom as an experience that's actually available to us, but it actually is, believe it or not. It just has to be on your menu, on your own to-do list. And as I'm saying, it helps if that's the very top of the to-do list every day, every minute. You won't get lost for too long. So that's number one. So it's one thing to say, I want to be free. But what is it that keeps us from experiencing freedom? Well, there's so much that in our lives that we're usually, for most of us, there's so much in our lives that consciously and unconsciously that we're not really taking responsibility for. Most of us have good reasons to feel very victimized and hard done by. And we do. Because we have good reasons to feel victimized and hard done by, and we do. The problem is, if you want to be free, you can't be a victim, even if you have a good reason to be a victim. So the problem is that the desire to experience the state of unconditional liberation, unconditional freedom, demands that we embody, express, and embrace, demonstrate a level of self-responsibility and human maturity that is way above average. So the experience of inner freedom doesn't come cheap. So what I'm proposing is what I believe is that if we're serious about the attainment of inner freedom, we have to be willing to, as a prerequisite, do something that almost nobody wants to do, which is take full responsibility for themselves without conditions, no ifs, ands, buts, or maybes. Not an easy thing to do, especially in this day and age, where we might even be being encouraged to claim our victimhood by people who don't know any better, but that's another discussion. So it's a very hard thing to do. Assume unconditional responsibility for your own karmic predicament. No matter what happened in the past. Maybe horrible things happened to you in the past. It probably did. But if you want to be free, you have to stop blaming anybody else for what happened. And realize that it was part of your own karma, for better or for worse. And you want to accept responsibility for it, not to punish yourself at all. But because you want to be happy, you want to be free, you want to be liberated. So that's the first step. The second step in this process is if you're really serious, you want to begin to contemplate the nature of what it means to take responsibility not only for yourself and your own personal karmic predicament, but for the entire predicament of all manifest reality. Because when we wake up to consciousness, when we wake up to the totality of reality, we realize the essence of Vedanta, which is I am that. We realize that beyond the small self, beyond the ego, beyond the narrative of your small self, you are the whole. I am that. So at a personal level, at a relative level, you want to take responsibility for your personal karmas and problems and issues, unresolved issues. But at an absolute level, at a transcendental level, at a cosmic level, you want to at least earnestly aspire to take responsibility for the totality of reality, for the totality of the predicament that we all find ourselves in as being part and parcel of a creative process that's in progress, and it needs our attention desperately and urgently. Now, it's not actually possible to take responsibility for the totality of reality because we're only one unique individual. I'm just a single unique individual, and my powers are very limited when you think of the enormity of the totality of reality. But what I'm speaking about is to embrace a metaphysical intention. So you realize, in terms of relative reality, in terms of the fact that you're just a singular human being, there's only so much any of us can do. We know that. But while we can, on a personal level, take responsibility for all of our karmas personally, in a relative sense. In an absolute sense, from a cosmic absolute perspective, we can spiritually aspire, sincerely aspire to take responsibility for the totality of reality, for the predicament that the evolving cosmos finds itself in at this particular moment in time. And so this can be a heartfelt sense of care and responsibility for reality itself. So I'm speaking about this notion of taking responsibility, wanting to be free more than anything else. How do we do that? By taking responsibility for ourself, small s, our egoic self, all of the karmas that our ego has generated in this life and dragged along with all the karmas that it's dragged along from past lives. I want to take responsibility in the relative context for all of those. And then in an absolute context, in a transcendental context, we want to aspire to take responsibility for the karma of the entire creative process, which can't really be done, but we can metaphysically aspire to do so. What do you care about? I care about my wife, my son, my dog, my family, my friends. But what I really care about, even more, is the totality of reality, which is everything that exists. And so, to repeat, it's not something we can't really take responsibility for the totality of reality practically, but we can metaphysically, we can aspire to. This is called the law of volitionality. Take responsibility for everything that I personally ever done, the consequences of everything I've ever done in my prior birth, if that's something you believe in this current life circumstance, this current life situation. And we even want to try to take responsibility for what hasn't happened yet. As a metaphysical aspiration, as a meta intention, as a cosmic intention that's we'll never be able to succeed at, but we can aspire to do it. And I think we want to learn how to aspire beyond our means. Aspire for the best part of ourselves and our soul and our heart to do things that we can't possibly do, but we want to aspire beyond all of our limitations. And if we can learn to consistently aspire beyond our limitations, we find we'll be able to take responsibility for a lot more than we thought we could. So I'm speaking about thinking with a big mind and a big heart about what it means to be a responsible person. And most of the greatest realizers throughout history have all demonstrated that as an expression of their own awakening, as an expression of their enlightenment, as a sign of their awakening, they all expressed in different ways a care for all of life and for the evolution of consciousness as a whole. It's part of what it means to be awake. We find a sense of care for life in the larger sense of what that means with life with a capital L. And when we realize I am that, then we're just caring for ourselves really in all its totality and enormity. So I call that the law of volitionality. And it's never something that we can be finished with, obviously, but it's a practice and a very intentional relationship to life, to what it means to be alive. It can keep us very busy for a long time, way beyond this lifetime, that's for sure. And what we find as we wake up to all this is that there's a profound relationship between the unconditional aspiration and longing for liberation and the awakening to the aspiration to take responsibility for life, for reality, for the evolution of consciousness. There is a spontaneously emerging relationship between these two positions, these two meta positions. I want to be free more than anything else. I want to be unconditionally free more than anything else. And I aspire to take responsibility for the totality of reality. I aspire to do that. And the more we aspire to take responsibility for the greatest good, the more it will help to liberate us at a soul level from our selfishness and our narcissism and our small-mindedness. So the third way we can practice enlightenment, sounds funny to say, but the third meta position we can learn to take and put into practice is the hardest one. And the third one tells us to, if it says, if you want to be free more than anything else, you have to be willing to face everything and avoid nothing. It's a very tall order. The hardest part of spiritual practice, I believe, is facing reality. The practice of, not just the practice of awareness, but really paying attention to what's happening. Paying attention to what's happening, paying attention to the context in which everything's happening. Because you really care about liberation and you care about truth, meaning, purpose, values. Because you care, you realize how urgent it is to pay attention to the context of the present moment in your life. So are you seeing everything as much as you can in context, and are you making an effort to pay attention to everything that's happening in context? And what's the context of this conversation? The context of this conversation is the aspiration for unconditional freedom. So you're paying attention day to day, moment to moment, hour to hour, week to week, month to month, year to year. Are you paying attention? Or are you sleepwalking? So we've all heard the story that when someone asked the Buddha, was he a god? He said, no, I'm not a god. He said, I'm awake. I love that. So the opposite of being awake is being asleep, and most of us are sleepwalking through life and we don't even know we're sleepwalking. We don't even know we're asleep. So this is why it's so important to pay attention, because paying attention means making the effort to wake up and making the effort to be awake. The way to make the effort to be awake is by making the effort to pay attention. Paying attention is hard. It's easy to not think too deeply for yourself. It's easier just to absorb information and not have to make the effort to practice discrimination and introspection and contemplation and self and other scrutiny, and to struggle with existential insecurity, cognitive insecurity, philosophical insecurity, ethical insecurity, metaphysical insecurity. Are you paying attention to all these things? Are you paying attention? Because the more you pay attention, the more awake you're going to be, and the more you're going to struggle with your own capacity for clarity and conscious cognition. Facing everything and avoiding nothing means coming to terms, making the effort to come to terms with all of your own karmas. How many times have we acted out of ignorance in ways that cause suffering to other people? In this lifetime, or maybe in any other lifetime, I don't know. Facing everything and avoiding nothing means facing our darkest hidden motivations that we are terrified even to consider, on one hand. And on the other hand, we have to have the courage to face the brightness of our own unrealized potential. Not only are most of us afraid of our own unexamined shadows, but we're equally, if not even more, afraid of our own potential for light, liberation, illumination, and inner freedom, joy and real happiness. You've all heard the phrase fear of freedom. So I can't tell you how many times in my life as a teacher I've seen So many people awaken temporarily to their own potential for liberation and then run like hell because they were so afraid of the possibility of becoming actualized. So facing everything and avoiding nothing doesn't only mean facing the darkness, it also means facing the light. Having the courage to face the light of our own potential for illumination, liberation, and inner freedom. So facing everything and avoiding nothing is the hardest practice. And it's something that we have to remain busy with constantly if we're serious about being free. I am practicing to face everything and avoid nothing. Why? Because I want to be free. And I think it's actually probably impossible to face everything and avoid nothing because there's too much to face. We can do, but we can usually do a lot better than we have been. Because when I say facing everything and avoiding nothing, it's an absolute position. So it's a meta position, it's an absolute position which we want to aspire for. Aspire with earnestness and sincerity. I sincerely and earnestly am aspiring to face everything and avoiding nothing. And the more we aspire to be more conscious, the more conscious we're going to be. So consciousness is not merely an experience of a higher state. It's not really the experience of an expanded state of whatever consciousness is. But it also means if someone is more conscious, if you get to know them, you get the sense that they're paying more attention than you are. They see more, they know, they seem to see more, they seem to know more, they seem to understand more. They seem to constantly recognize more than you do. That's because they've been paying more attention. It's not a mystery. So once again, to repeat, paying attention in the way that I've been speaking about, facing everything, avoiding nothing, requires a lot of diligence and a lot of effort and a lot of intention. Because as I said, it's easy, because life is, as we know, quite overwhelming. These days, probably more than it's ever been in many ways. And so, because it's so overwhelming, a lot of us just want to escape. Too much thinking, too much information, too much input. I want to break. Very understandable, but if we don't want to get lost in life, important point. If we don't want to get lost in life, are you lost? If we don't want to get lost, if we want to find ourselves, and once we find ourselves to stay found, we've got to make the effort to pay attention. Face everything, avoid nothing, to pay very intense attention to what we're doing, why we're doing it, and to how we're reacting to this and to that, paying attention to what's making us tick. We're also deeply conditioned. That's how we're put together. We're biologically conditioned, psychologically conditioned, emotionally conditioned, cognitively conditioned, culturally conditioned. It's impossible to be conscious of all of that, all the ways we're conditioned. But that's why we have to pay more attention so we can have at least a prayer or a hope of not being lost in all of our conditioning, right? I know some people don't believe in free will. I believe that we are all born with a small measure of free will. Not a lot, a little bit, but something to work with. And I think a big part of spiritual practice is learning how to, through putting some of these teachings that I'm speaking about now into practice, we can learn to expand our capacity for agency or free will. And with diligent spiritual practice, we can constantly work to expand our capacity for authentic agency and sovereignty and autonomy and independence and clear cognition, clear thinking, being a clear-minded person. I know who I am. I know why I'm here, and I know what I want to do. I don't want to be a biological robot. I want to be a free agent, expressing the greatest good that I understand exists. So those three, wanting to be free more than anything else, learning how to take unconditional responsibility for all of our karmas, past, present, and future, and take responsibility for the totality of reality as best we can, and practicing facing everything and avoid nothing is I believe all of the Dharma practice that one needs to learn how to do if you want to be personally free, if you want to be personally liberated. If you learn how to let go of your mind through the practice of deep meditation, notice I use the word deep, not light, but the practice of deep meditation means it's a kind of meditation that when you experience it, it actually gives you a taste of freedom. And meditation that doesn't give you a taste of freedom ain't going to help you that much. So the practice of deep meditation that is based upon, that is resting on the foundation of the desire, cultivating the desire for unconditional liberation, take responsibility for yourself, and facing everything and avoiding nothing, will tell you, reveal to you, make clear to you every single day how you can be enlightened, how you can be free. Choosing to take the position of freedom in relationship to your inner and outer experience can liberate you in and of itself. If you want to be free, you're going to make sure you make the right choices. So there are two more of these tenets, these positions, but these three plus knowing how to let go of the mind are all you need, because everything is in there for your personal liberation. But then, of course, this teaching is putting the classical notion of Eastern Enlightenment in the context of the Western discovery of evolution, that we're part of an evolving cosmos, that we're all part and parcel of an evolving cosmos. With my personal experience of consciousness and cognition, of embodied consciousness and cognition, and your personal experience of embodied consciousness and cognition has been produced by a process that had a beginning in time about 14 billion years ago. And this process has catalyzed the emergence of three big bangs. The first big bang was the emergence of light and energy. The second big bang was the emergence of life, and the third big bang was the emergence of mind. So the fourth principle here, which is called the process perspective, encourages us to see our own experience of embodied existence, consciousness and cognition, emotion, our emotional experience, even our metaphysical experiences, to see the entirety of all of our human experience as being produced and the product of an evolutionary or creative process that had a beginning in time. So now you see your own personal experiences and your unique body, mind, and personality as part of a process, a 14 billion year process, creative process, that's in progress. I am the energy and intelligence that created the universe, awakening to itself and bearing witness to itself through the body, mind, personality of, in my case, of Andrew. It's true for each and every one of us. Who I am is not limited to the body, mind, personality of Andrew. The body, mind, personality of Andrew is a product of this 14 billion year cosmic evolutionary process that's unfolding. So we want to learn to practice, to see our own personal experience of being me in the context of this evolutionary unfolding. It means all of your thoughts and your feelings pleasant and unpleasant, your preferences, your psychological experience, your emotional experience, your cognitive experience, your metaphysical experience, obviously your physical experience. Everything you experience is being produced by a process that's in progress. It's a cosmic process that's in progress. And your experience is being produced by it. This whole movie is being produced by the evolving cosmos. And the more you can see that, the more you can, because what I'm speaking about here, this process perspective, is to be contemplated on a regular basis. I am the evolving universe, bearing witnesses to itself and awakening to itself through the body, mind, personality of myself. And if you hear that once, say, okay, yeah, okay, what next? But the point is, do you see your own pain, your own emotional pain, as being a very impersonal expression of the human experience, that all human beings experience emotional pain? Do you ever recognize that your pain is everyone else's pain? Because all human beings experience emotional pain or fear. When you experience fear, do you think it's special? Is it my fear? Do you think it's unique to you? Or is your fear identical to the fear that I experience? Maybe in lesser and greater intensity, but it's the same fear. Or sexual ecstasy, for example. Is that some special feeling that you have that's unique to you? I doubt it. And so what we want to do when we embrace this process perspective is we want to begin to practice contemplation every day of the impersonal nature of the process that is producing the experience that we're having. So what we're trying to do is recover our experience of consciousness and cognition from the grip of the ego, from the grip of the ego story, and say, no, this is not the ego story. This is the story of evolution, realizing itself and recognizing itself through the body, mind, personality of me and you. The cosmos is literally unfolding within and through the experience I'm having as this body, mind, and personality. And it will help you to see the best moments in your life and the worst moments of your life, all of your pleasure and all of your pain, all of your fear and all of your exhilaration, in more and more of a cosmic, radically impersonal process perspective. And it helps you to be able to see your own story much more objectively than you usually can. Because the ego's perspective is so precious and so narcissistic, so we're usually so trapped in the ego's narcissistic interpretive framework that we can't see what's happening from a larger perspective, of a larger place. And so what we have to do when we embrace the process perspective is learn how to step back and objectify what's happening. It's not necessarily easy to do, but you can do this with mundane things as you can do this with things that are very important. Even the experience of sleep and hunger. So many of the experiences we have are so conditioned. Learn to see all of it as being produced by this creative process that's in progress, and it's been in process for a long time. We're going to remain in progress for a very long time. And it's a process in which we are appearing in temporarily. We're making a temporary appearance, going through those, then we're going to disappear. And I believe we're going to reappear again, and this is going to go on and on and on, in some shape or form. But have this process perspective always at the ready as a perspective to refer to in relation to anything and everything you may be experiencing, which is maybe the horror of the war in Ukraine on one hand, and to maybe some difficult things you've been struggling with personally, all of it. See all of it from a process perspective and work on it every day. Every day, take a few moments to see your life experience as being produced by a cosmic process that's in progress. And feel into the truth of it. And try not to take your own experience so personally. Easier said than done. But this, if you constantly use evolution, the evolutionary process as a reference point in your own felt experience from moment to moment, it will become easier and easier to do. So I strongly encourage you to do that. It's called embracing a process perspective. And finally, the last one is called cosmic conscience. And cosmic conscience points to the evolution of our spiritual aspirations. So when we start out on the spiritual path, we're in this for our own enlightenment. I want to be free for my own sake. I want to be free because I want to experience what the Buddha experienced. It's everything I was saying at the beginning of our call today. I want to be free for my own liberation. But if you pursue your own liberation earnestly and sincerely, and you begin to succeed and actually begin to awaken with some kind of relative stability, and you do awaken, it begins to dawn on you that this whole cosmic aspiration towards consciousness that was so touching you and moving you so deeply at a soul level was never about you or for you in the first place. It was really about the evolution of the whole process that the universe is trying to awaken through you because you're available. Because when we awaken in a way that's very deep and profound and permanent, we're no longer living for the life of the ego anymore. We're not living to get and become for ourselves anymore. We're living for the evolution of the interior of the cosmos. We're living for the evolution of the interior of the cosmos. We're not living our own life anymore for our own personal gain. We discovered a bigger purpose, a larger purpose, which is the evolution of the interior of the cosmos, which is the ultimate purpose to exist. So the fifth tenet is called for the sake of the whole. I'm living this life not for my own sake anymore. I used to be in this for myself. Now I'm living for much bigger reasons. Now I'm not living a small life, a personal life anymore. Maybe. But I'm living a big life for the biggest reasons. I know who I am. I know why I'm here. I know what the purpose of this experiment in consciousness is all about. And I'm here to make a difference. That's why I exist. It's called care for the whole. And this living with this kind of care, this kind of aspiration is the aspiration of what in Buddhism they call a bodhisattva. So a bodhisattva is no longer living for his or her own liberation anymore. They're living for everybody else's liberation. So they're not here to they're not even here for their own liberation anymore, even though they'll get that for free. It's a free benefit of the awakening of the bodhisattva. But they're here to help guide the process, to help everyone else along. They're here for the highest reasons and the highest purpose that there is. And if you look at the awakening to enlightened awareness through the lens of cultural and cosmic evolution, that means they're committed to being here for as long as it will take for the whole universe to turn to light, which means light is a metaphor for consciousness. So that would mean metaphorically, when the entire universe became fully self-aware, this aspiration would be fulfilled. I think that's going to take a little bit of time. So the aspiration of the bodhisattva is is really an eternal one. It's an eternal aspiration, and the eternal aspiration to participate in the creative process for the sake of its evolution and liberation will liberate us unconditionally, forever. So that's the recipe. That's the recipe for enlightenment. How can I practice enlightenment? So remember that the idea behind this series of 3 teachings is to find the answer to the questions, how can I practice enlightenment? The reason we want to find out how to practice it is because for those rare moments when we find, lo and behold, that our enlightenment is not permanently spontaneous and effortless and natural, that we can make a choice to practice enlightenment. And I think you can tell from the way I've been describing this that this practice becomes all-consuming. I think that became clear. And that's what happens when you get bitten by this bug and you begin to awaken. You find that it begins to take over your soul and your heart. And then that awakens within us a very noble aspiration for evolution and purification. It means we always want to become a better person. More sensitive, more kind, more intelligent, more compassionate, more generous, more sincere, more conscious, and more free. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice that from a relative perspective, for all of us, there's always going to be a lot farther we can go. There's always going to be a lot farther we can go. And awakening to a kind of a heartfelt aspiration to continue to develop in all these ways is a big deal. It means I really care about consciousness. I care about human potential. I care about life. I care about what's possible. And somebody has to take responsibility for that. And if it's not going to be me, then who's it going to be? What's beautiful about these teachings, if you can embrace them and understand them in the right way, is that they're radically and profoundly self-implicating. They can be radically self-implicating in a way that makes the ego very uncomfortable, as it should. If it's the real thing, it will make your ego uncomfortable. It's a good sign. And as I often say, the goal here is to get the ego out of the driver's seat of our car. Body, mind, personality is the car we're driving in. We want to get the ego out of the driver's seat and get the true self, or in the evolutionary context, the authentic self, into the driver's seat and get going. And these teachings, my teachings on meditation and my teachings on these 5 principles, can take us all the way home. Because these teachings, you can never get on the other side of them. They're too overwhelming, they're too all-consuming, they're too demanding. But that through putting them into practice, we can become an honest person at the level of our souls, no longer corrupt, full of self-deception, but a truly honest person. Okay. Thank you.